Hi, Misha here, and last time on Friday, looked at this figure from Joy Toy, something I didn't know even existed, a World War II era Soviet-Russian soldier, infantry. Kind of my first look, never dealt with this line before, and he was a sample, and I liked him, so again, kind of thanks to Amazon, same day delivery, I had the two other figures come in. We have a U.S. Army soldier, World War II, and a German Wehrmacht soldier, World War II. So I thought we'd talk about these. And also, I thought I'd share a few things I've learned, both about the figures themselves, again, Joy Toy, and this particular Russian one with a little more study. So yeah, we'll just dive on in. Okay, let's first put the American on the spinny thing. He is a typical U.S. Army guy. Unfortunately, he doesn't come with two hats. You just have the one helmet. I already put it on his head. He does have two firearms, though. We have what is very clearly an M3 grease gun. And a little bit surprised, but not disappointed, he has an M1 carbine. And then he has a typical pack. No removable sleeping bag, though. Bedroll. Yeah, pretty standard. I will say, though, whereas the Russian just had the hands with him and the two hats, the American actually comes with, well, actually, the Russian has the two hands on him and then the two fist hands, but only the two gripping hands. This guy comes with the hands on him, two alternative grabby hands because of the grease gun and carbine being rather different, and then two fist hands. So you get 6 hands instead of 4, and I guess that's why you don't get a hat. Yeah, pretty much a standard ground pounder. There. Alright. Moving on. And now our German. Pointedly not calling him the N-word. He's Wehrmacht, which is, correct, but because I'm sure they want to sell these around the world, there are several places where they couldn't or shouldn't sell with anything with the N-word on it, so we'll go with that. Even YouTube's a little meh. And here we have him again. Removable helmet. He too comes with 6 hands because he has 2 very different types of guns. Right now in his hands is a Karabiner or Kar 98K sniper rifle. And then he also has the submachine gun MP40. So it seems like each of the 3 figures is going to come with a subgun and then some type of rifle, although interestingly very different classes of rifle. And he has one other kind of, I don't know how to say hidden, but on his body weapon, which makes sense. The other 2 have entrenching tools. He gets a knife. And it is removable, which is pretty neat. But before we get to that, yeah, let's talk about accessories, and beginning with this little MP40, because it's kind of a neat feature item. It has a stock, but you notice it only has one strut. That's because it's articulated. It actually folds. Try not to break it, but it will fold up all the way. I did it earlier. There we go. Yeah, the butt plate doesn't fold. That might be a bit much to ask on this size, but you can fold the stock up. Sling magazine. It even has a tiny little bar under here, resting bar, sight. I'm going to say it's, to my mind, the most accurate of the submachine guns as far as like authenticity. Yeah, pretty neat, I think. And putting the American back on, the reason I say it's probably the most accurate, authentic, is his M3 doesn't have a stock. Now, was the M3 stock removable? Oh yeah, the retracting stock, not folding. He doesn't have it, it's just that. So you could say, hey, just pulled it off, that's no big thing. In fact, they pulled it off to use as a mag loader, where they could put up a mag with it. But little tiny ding against it. It didn't have a stock. Kind of wish it did. I will give him credit though. His M1 carbine is actually correct World War II vintage because it does not have the bayonet lug. Of course, full size I could talk about several other different changes, but at this scale, which is 1/18, the not having a lug is the most identifiable part. And he does come with different hands for the grease gun and the carbine. Here those are. Well, these are the ones that came with the German, but I think they're kind of universal hands. Punching and different types of grippy with and without extended trigger finger. I have to admit, I was incorrect about the hands too. I said that they just rotated, they didn't have a hinge. It was just that they were stiff on the Russian. There is actually a tiny little hinge. There's even articulation in the wrist behind that because it's a kind of a double peg joint thing. So if you do break the peg, your whole arm isn't lost. Just that kind of that double-ended joint. The fisted hands are kind of a harder plastic. The grippy hands are a real soft kind of rubbery plastic, which on the one hand doesn't maybe hold the weapons as tight as some would want, but if you use their bodies to kind of brace with, I'd rather be a little loose than too tight and things, you know, can break thumbs or break the weapons. So there's always compromises at this size. And speaking of size, these are, you know, actually correct. I've seen some online claim that they're closer to 3 3/4. They're actually a little smaller than other 1/18, but, well, the tape measure doesn't seem to bear that out. Alright, here we have the tape measure again. And yeah, especially with his helmet on, he is really, yeah, just over 4 inches. 4.1, maybe 4.2, depending on which figure. And this is about as straight as I can get his legs. He's a little bit curved forward because of the baka. That's alright. So he's certainly not 3 3/4. Which, I mean, you say scale, but everything's relative. And of course, some things have to be altered or changed to work, because you can't do a 1-to-1. That wouldn't work. For example, with helmets, I think one thing that might be throwing people off, the heads, the unhelmeted heads, are a tad undersized if you're being 100% realistic. But the alternative to undersizing the heads would be having an oversized helmet. So when the helmet's on, it really is pretty proper. But a 1/18 scale helmet made of plastic is going to be thicker than a real steel helmet shrunk down 18 times. I hope that makes sense. Back here, canteen. This is his knife. And it does pull out pretty easy. And it will fit one of the gripping hands that doesn't have the trigger fingers. So there even is a knife hand. The Russian soldier we looked at didn't have a knife, but then again, that wasn't standard issue. This, you know, type of large knife wasn't standard issue for the typical infantry. Anyway. Slide her in. It goes in. It actually works easier than I thought it would. So yeah, you've got a canteen, some ammo pockets, and a Low rider backpack. I don't think anything removes. Double joint knees. The arms rotate. They do come out pretty good. Everyone's favorite position. Now, I'm actually very impressed with the articulation in these. Again, I'm a kid from the 80s, so yeah, even the 3 3/4 G.I. Joes, which were clearly superior to the Star Wars in terms of articulation, had some limitations. But yeah, the elbows bend pretty good. They are single. The hands impress me. And yeah, his sniper rifle is pretty good. Pretty authentic enough. Even a little cleaning rod under the barrel, a little bayonet lug, little scope. And yeah, it looks like the sling is unpeggable because there's a little peg. I was kind of wondering about that because sometimes the slings are in kind of an odd place. Now we know. Cool. Still learning things, of course, and probably will be for quite some time. Speaking of, let's bring our Russian back out. Last time we talked a bit about the headwear. This is his steel helmet I put on him this time. This is, I guess, a SSH 39 or 40. I don't really have what to tell the difference. Or a S Shaw, if you prefer. And then this, like as I said, and I got, yeah, it is very small. It's a little cap. Like I said, it's not a new Mishaco because it doesn't have the thick wool or flaps. It's actually often called a pioneer cap, a forage cap, a paletka. It's just kind of a casual summertime wear if you're not directly in combat. Pretty neat that you get both options because they were both issued. And I said earlier, I think the MP40 is probably the most authentic subgun. Not that this Papa Shaw is bad. You know, I pointed out the first time it does have kind of a roundy barrel. Some have thought it looks more like a PPD 38 or 40. I kind of see that, but I think they were still going for a Papa Shaw look. I was seeing if that sling pops off this one. It does. Yeah, so you can either rotate the sling while still on the gun or pop it off. Kind of neat, but I can see that getting a little loose over time, but you can always put a little glue. A little dib-a-dab of glue will do it. But not that this is probably my favorite one, but I would say the MP40 looks the most accurate, authentic. He seems to be in a pretty early war uniform. The reason I say that, the wrappings around the feet, these were used up until about 1943, give or take. They certainly were used in the 41, and I think they were kind of going for a 41, maybe 42 look here. Everything's correct. We've got our canteen, we've got our bedroll. I thought this might be a folded up greatcoat, which were certainly issued. It could be. It's either a greatcoat or a bedroll. Oh, a fun fact I've discovered. If you pull the roll off, you can use this thing back here, using the strap on your helmet, and hang your helmet off the backpack and put the cap on his head. So you can carry both. Again, no knife on this one. Instead, he has a shovel and trenching tool, which was a common issue. And he does seem to have the later style satchel, carry satchel, which was introduced pretty early on, 1941-42. The uniform again kind of seems to be of that era. The early World War II Great War uniforms, straighten out his leg a little bit, were pretty much like what was used in the Tsarist period with minor mods. So they kind of a throwback uniform, and as you'd expect with the disarray of the Red Army, 1941-42, a lot of different things could be found. Again, he's not 100% historically accurate, but that's alright. What is? And this scale and this price, I mean, I've seen these as low as $14, $17, $20. So, you know, for that, I'll give a little room. But no, he seems accurate enough because there's so many different ways a Russian can look. And I've seen a little criticism about the SVT-40 he comes with, even speculating it might supposed to be an AVS-36, but hard to tell at this size. It could also be an SVT-38. Yeah, that detaches. But doesn't matter. Automatic rifle. And yes, while later on in the war these became less and less common, they still made 1.5 million of the 40s. And in 1941 and 42, they were far more common than you'd find in 44. So, I guess my point is, even if the guns are slightly older models, if he's a 1941 guy, you could see them carrying them. But I think they were going for a SVT-40 here. They only did about 55,000, sniper versions. But I think they just wanted to give him a sniper. I think it's really interesting they didn't go with a Mosin Nagant, but I think it's kind of cool they didn't. A little bit of a throwback gun. Of course, none of these are officers, so we don't have any pistols. Very rarely would a private or a corporal have a handgun. A sergeant might, but typically you didn't see that until you get to officers. One other kind of difference I've noticed, the foot pegs are in the heel of his boot, but with the German over here, threw me for a loop, they're actually in the toe. I guess maybe they thought the boot heel was too small? I'm not sure. Oh well. They do move up and down. A little bit of wiggle on the side. But you have a rotation up here, so if you want to point them different directions, that's no problem. So yeah, those are the three that actually just seem to have been released December of 2023, and as I record this, it's the first couple of days of February 2024, so they've been out less than 2 months. Well, I say that. They're actually reissues and slightly reworked versions of figures I think they released about 4 years ago. But it's nice to see they're back. And that's what we have. So, popping these off the stands real quick. I still think it's neat that they do come with stands. By the way, the stock on the MP40 is just pegged in, like a lot of the stuff, so it's removable. Yeah, I think it's interesting they did the M1 carbine. Really, all the rifles are a bit of a throwback. You got 2 snipers, 1 standard kind of issue gun. The grease gun, okay, you could have a Thompson, but the grease gun, especially the M3, did serve at the end of World War II. The PPSH was definitely the most prevalent submachine gun in Russia, as was the MP40. Of course, the MP38 was virtually the same gun, so no biggie. And the Kar 98 with the scope is basically a standard Kar 98 with a scope stuck on, so that's alright. Pretty standard guns in the German hand. But, yeah, I'm reasonably impressed for what they are. So, will I get more? Yeah, sure, why not? When it comes to the Russian, they only seem to have made the infantry guy and then an officer. Not really many of those made. The Germans, there seems to be a lot of repaints, but I don't know how many actual new molds they have. So it just seems like they might have just mostly done autumn, spring, camo, what have you. And there's an officer for those as well. And then the Americans maybe get the most because there's an officer. There's also an airborne, kind of a D-Day set. So there's the most sets for the German, but they seem to be more repaints, including an SS officer. But there might be more tooling for the American, and of course there's all kinds of other guns. So that's pretty neat. There's also a Chinese set, which might be fun. Kind of curious about that. But there's no Japanese, and I really, really wish there was a Japanese. I can accept not having some of the others, but you know, you've got American and Russian. You need to give the Germans an ally. I don't know if they ever will, but I'd love to have a tiny little Arasaka Nambu Type 100. Maybe they will, because again, they just re-released these as single figures. It seems like in the past they released them in packs of either 3 or 5 figures. Now they're doing single. Maybe they'll at least do a single figure Japanese infantry soldier, and maybe as a Japanese officer. That'd be pretty neat. But I also wouldn't mind a Japanese Marine. Of course, I wouldn't mind an American Pacific Marine either. There's potential. But no, kind of a cool little find over the weekend. Thought I'd share a second video with you as I analyze these more. But check them out. They're kind of neat. And I don't know what I'll do with them, but I see some display potentials. Too bad I don't think Joy Toy does like scaled vehicles. While doing a full-size tank might be hard to match these, you could do motorcycles, jeeps, maybe some light tanks. There's a couple of tanks that were relatively small. You might be able to even get away with the T-34. Don't know. Maybe a Sherman. Probably not a Tiger. Anyway, yeah, just musing around. But I better get back with it, guys. I just wanted to share these with these because they came in. Let me know what you think. And if so, which one's your favorite? The American, the German, the Russian? I really do think the Russian's my favorite. But they all kind of have things. I think this one's neat for the bedroll that can remove and the 2 hats. I think the knife on this one's kind of neat that it comes out, and he has probably the most authentic guns. Gotta admit, the American is kind of my least favorite. Not because he's bad, but he's more plain than the others. And as much as I like the M1 carbine he comes with, kind of wish he came with an M1 Grand. Even a 1903 A3. I don't know. It's cool, though. It is cool, though. This is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.